It's that time again when we speak to someone who has some cultural knowledge to drop for us. And tonight's guest is a local man who's changed his life for the better. He decolonised his mind and went travelling around the world to soak up the knowledge that many might be afraid to touch. James Diboe from Tuxtiff has been on a spiritual journey for over 14 years, and he joins me now to tell us a little bit more about his experience. So James, welcome to the evening show.
Thanks for having me, Jermaine. How you doing?
I'm very well, man. Thank you very much. I mean, it's a crazy time we're living in right now, but we're still living, so it's all good.
That's it. Got to take the negative and you've got to make it positive.
We were chatting a bit before we started this interview. We do a special show on a Thursday called In Conversations With, where, we get the full background of someone, and you are definitely somebody, we'll love to get back onto the show to get a full, look at the, the life you've lived, and especially like these last 14 years, your journey and stuff you've done.
Yeah.
So this is almost like the starter before the main.
Oh yeah.
Shall we say?
Preview. Yeah.
Yeah, so where did your journey start then for you, James? Or where would you say it started?
Well, when I started really getting into the travelling from like 2006, when I started with Cuba. But just going back before that, like growing up, I knew a lot about African history and Nigerian descent from my father's side. So I got a lot of like history drummed into my head, how important it is about African history, call yourself a Nigerian, knowing your roots. And then later on, I started to get into researching myself, where I'm actually reading, I'm actually searching. And also, I was always quite deep from quite young. I've been on a few different routes, whether there was Farrakhan, the Black Panthers, even I've been into all different phases in my life and that. And then when I started traveling about 2006, I went to Cuba. And when you're first traveling, you're in the tourist zone. And there was something that told me I need to get out of there and go and meet some real people. So I just started.
I know that exact feeling.
Yeah, so once I decided to remove myself of what's portrayed around you, and I started mixing with local people I'd go on hour journeys, and then I'd be witnessing the culture. Also an African presence also in Cuba is very strong also. And and then when I started going into South America, places like Venezuela, Brazil, and then also going into Africa, like Gambia, Kenya, Zanzibar, and also Madagascar. And I was doing a lot of research in places, especially like Madagascar, because if you research about Madagascar, they act like they don't know who got there first, whether there was people who came from Indonesia or people who came from Africa. But it's pretty obviously Africans got there. I mean, you'd have to go a bit deeper into it. And also, when I went into the South Pacific, that was very interesting, meeting the Fijian people. The people in Fiji will clearly tell you they are from Lake Tanganyika in East Africa. So you have to give a specific place where they're from. You don't just only say they're African. And when I got to Fiji, the place where I stayed was called the First Landing Hotel, because that's the place where they first landed. And when you get there, the reason when they landed in the first landing, you'd have this something like a left foot. It looked like a golf course. And the chief stepped out with his left foot. So that's why they called it the First Landing, and they done it in the shape of a left foot. I got to meet the high chiefs there, and other tribes and that there. I mean, they're all like one big tribe. It's not like different tribes like other places and that. And he really embraced me, especially when I told them my Nigerian roots. And then also went over to Tonga Islands, because I wanted to know about their history. And I got to see a lot of the ancient monuments and structures. Like they have a Stonehenge in Tonga as well, and a 3-step pyramid. And meeting the Tongan people, mixing with the local people. And a lot of people, it's not really a big tourist area, Tonga, where it's like a lot of people like, backpacking, or most people suss that out. Oh, you must be on research, which I was on research as well. And places like Micronesia went to. I go places that not too many. I don't really know anyone who lives in Micronesia, So just like, cause you got a lot of these indigenous peoples around these areas. Also visiting the people in Hawaii, as well, trying to Hawaii is very different now than probably what it once was. if you look at old pictures from like the 50s, you'll see the Hawaiian Queen is clearly depicted as a black woman. Now, it's a lot changed now. People from Asia, Americans, it's changed a lot, and how these people get treated, the indigenous people, it's terrible.
I mean, James, sorry, James. I mean, coming from, Liverpool, and then you moved, was it 2006, did you say you started this travelling?
Yeah, really, every year, going deep out there.
What was it? I mean, were you born in Liverpool?
Yeah, I was born in Liverpool.
As a Scouse man, Scouse black man as well, moving, what were you hoping to find? Were you looking for something in particular when you were travelling around to all these places?
Yeah, well, I've always been curious about all the melanated peoples around the world. I'm a very spiritual person, where I have that feeling that there's something out there, and I really need to go out there. Even when I went to Fiji the first time, it was something telling me that I'm going to meet someone of importance there. And when I got there, and how people got me to meet the chief just by communicating so well with them, going back and forth with different stories, listening to their stories. Mm-hmm. They listened to my story from back in history. And one of the key things is when the person who mentored me was, I don't know if you've heard him, Dr. Runoko Rashidi. Dr. Runoko Rashidi, he was actually a great influence, where he was showing the melanated peoples of Asia. So I started going into the rainforests, and these are long drives. I went into to meet the Mani tribes in Thailand, and they clearly just look like African people if you look at them, black people from wherever. And also into the Philippines, you got the Eta tribe, and I had to go into these mountainous areas to go and visit them and see very spiritual people. I went to see the Orange Asli tribe in Malaysia.
I mean, is it normal for people to go and visit these types of tribes, or did you have to get some kind of permission to go? Because I know a lot of them don't like to experience outsiders.
Yeah, well, it was the first time I did it was I did it on a tour first time, where not like a tour where you go on the bus, we hired our own 4x4. I was there with my cousin Daniel, and we went on the adventure now, and it was excellent. They walked on the longest canopy in the world. You're getting to see how they live, make fires, and all about the stories and that. And there's a time when I've just took myself there though, which was I went on a 7-hour bus drive. Now this is the night time when I got there in Thailand and to meet the Mani, and I was just I was unsure exactly the route how to get there, but then I got there in the end. Communicate with different peoples in these areas, and then we got to meet a ranger. You have rangers in the park, and he took us in there. And, we got to meet the tribes, and they're going to, because with them, maybe when they see other tourists coming in, it's probably other people. They don't probably see black people coming in too much. Mm-hmm. So there's a spiritual connection once they see you. And, I've got video footage, I've got pictures of these peoples, and it was just great. I ate with them also, sitting in the little, bamboo type huts that they have.
How did they respond to you being a black Englishman as well?
Well, they don't really think of English. You see, they wouldn't assume that I'm from England, and no one's assumed I'm from England at most places in the world, because people just think everyone in England must be, yeah. But straight away, it's the spiritual connection when you meet, and it's kind of like you meet each other, we're seeing into something a bit different, where I'm not your average tourist going in there. I don't go in there like a tourist. I'm going in there to learn. And also, what I did with them, because these are very secluded people, I showed pictures of other tribes around the world to them to open their mind up too. And they were very surprised when they seen how many black people all across this whole world. So I was trying to educate them as well as they're educating me. Very friendly people, they just air people, pure nature. And that's what I'm about, embracing nature.
Interesting chat I'm having with James Diboe. I'm going to play a bit of music, and I'll be back with my chat with James.
I only miss you when it rains.
Jermaine Foster.
Jermaine BBC Radio Merseyside.
If you just tuned in, I've been chatting to James Diboe from Tuxtiff. He's been on a spiritual journey for over 14 years. We've been talking about his journey so far, all the travelling that you did there, you know, seeing these tribes and the way that they were responding to you and the way you responded to them. What kind of things did it learn or teach you about yourself, or just teach you in general?
Well, I've done a bit of research on them before I got there, but nothing's like meeting these in person. So when I've got there now, I'm observing how they live, you know, like the bamboo huts that they're in. Because I did do a lot of research before I went, by the way. So I knew about, like, their beliefs. I knew about how long they had been there, from listening to the anthropologist. And also they could be there a lot longer. I don't just listen to what an anthropologist says. They see, like, God is like nature. Mm-hmm. You know, if you read about them, people might misinterpret that they just worship animals or they just worship hundreds of gods, and it's not necessarily like that. They all know there's one supreme being, but they understand that there's a positive and a negative. Like, that's the forces of nature. You know, they understand what the earth's made up of. And some of these people, they've been there like 40,000 years. You know, some you might be 50,000, but they could be longer. I don't actually just put a date on something. When you start going so far back, you don't know how old human beings really are. Mm-hmm. You know, but I did learn a lot of them. Like, they're just amazing to see them in person, though, and they really embrace me. Like, the same vice versa, I've embraced them. And like, even going to Gambia to visit the roots, so, you know, of Kunta Kinte from when I'm a child, watching that, and it's just amazing to just be in the presence of such history. You know,
what do you think of what do you think that some of these indigenous tribes and stuff would think if you were to take them, you know, through a walk around Liverpool?
Wow, I mean, I think that they would be open to, if they could visit, you know, they'd like to visit if they could, you know, but I don't think it'd be any good for them. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I say any good for them, like, they'd be shocking to what they're exposed, because they're around such secluded areas where not too many people are, you know, these are very small tribes, a lot of these people, so they're not big populations, the minorities in their own country. It's like, for example, in some of these Southeast Asian countries, your average person doesn't even know that they're there. You know, even in Sri Lanka, I met someone over there because I knew a shopkeeper, and said my brother's out over there. So I told his brother I want to visit these tribes in Dambana, and it was a 7-hour drive. Then he didn't know about these people. He didn't even know what he's going to experience. So when we got there, and he's got the experience himself, he said to me afterwards, "Thank you for the experience," because he didn't have an idea that you had the tribes that were living there. And it was really shocking when your average people are not aware of who the indigenous peoples are, and he's been there for thousands of years. You know, it's very shocking to me at the time. Mm-hmm. But like, I'm very like now, well, you know, this is obviously doesn't get told. So that's why if you don't get told something in the school system or college or wherever you learn, university, you can be blinded to everything. And that's why, like, I've made great connections with people across the world where they've been very shocked of, like, how did you know this? Yeah. You know, like, but it's just down to my own curiosity, and I've researched for many years now, and, you know, it's my interest, my passion, and obviously it's something that I want to keep doing.
I work on obviously I work with Ganan as well on the Upfront show. We have a segment on that show from Professor Stephen Small, who you know, he's a university. He works over in the University of California in Berkeley. He does the African studies over there. And he talks about decolonizing the mind. You know, when you hear a statement like that, what does that mean to you?
It's because of the colonization, where we've got chains on our brains, and it's time to take them chains off. We might not be in shackles, but the shackles are definitely on the mind still. You know, and I broke my shackles a long time ago.
I mean,
You
that's
know,
somebody who kind of doesn't get that imagery or can't get that
yeah.
analogy. What do you mean by chains on the brain?
Well, it's mental slavery now. It's mental slavery. You know, it's just because you don't have the chains on you anymore, the shackles. It's now a mental slavery where you see some people, you know, it's shadism now where, you know, you've got people, whether bleaching the skin, which I've seen in parts of the world, being told that means you're beautiful, you know, people straightening the hair, you know, or it's buying Asian hair as well. You know, that was a shocking one. So it's all these things to fit in with the colonizer, which, you know, we can all have our little habits, you know, we're not there because we're living in this society, a Western society, and the Western society pushed all countries in the world, you know, Africa included, Caribbean, you know, about the skin bleaching out there.
Yeah.
And I've seen out in Kenya, people skin bleaching, Gambia the same. You need to learn that we weren't just slaves. You know, we had rich civilizations, you know, from a long time before any race on the planet. You know, we're the first peoples. You know, we populated the world. You know, you've got Egypt, Nile Valley civilization. You've got Nubia, Kush, Nigeria, the Nok culture. You've got Songhai in Ghana, Great Zimbabwe. You know, and Malian Empire, Mansa, the richest man ever. You know, you could go on forever with all these different rich African cultures. Look at the Moors that went to Spain, Italy, these places, and these civilized Europeans went in the Dark Ages. You know, these don't get, like, they try and depict the Moors as if they weren't black. You know, they won't tell it that these were black Africans that came in and brought civilization to Europe, just with the first universities. But they don't deal with nothing like that because they need to keep us unconfident. So, you know, when the Europeans are the great fathers of civilization, it's, you know, the Greeks, you know, they taught the Europeans, but then you look and who taught the Greeks? And obviously the Africans taught the Greeks. You know, so
Education.
This is it. Education is key.
Education is the key. I may always remember as a kid, you know, I'd say certain sentences or certain statements to maybe my mom or grandparents or someone, and they'd always, you know, quote that, you know, the Bob Marley quote, you know, emancipate your mind from mental slavery, you know, and they didn't like me saying certain things because, you know, because of those reasons. It's like, you know, well, that's not what you should be thinking. You know, you should be taking more pride in yourself and your culture. But you know, but as a kid, you know, you want to. It's because of the education, like you said. You know, as a kid, you kind of think you want to fit in or you want to act a certain way, and that means denying something about yourself, and then you get checked by your grandparents or your parents, and they tell you to rein it in.
That's the teachers are parents. So, and I think that if they don't know the history, then, you know, why would someone want to learn the history? You know, the parents need to be involved in education too, as far as obviously involved in the school curriculum education. But you need to learn themselves. It's for all of us, this, you know, and then we need to like teach people. We need to teach the world who we are. You know, that's what we should be doing, because we can't be having people teaching our history in a watered down version. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong, some people can contribute, or the races can contribute. You know, there have been people who've contributed before, but it needs to come from us, because we need to get the purest version of our history.
Big thanks once again to James Diboe for having a great chat with me this afternoon. If you like the sound of James, you'd like to hear a bit more from him, you want to follow him maybe on his socials, you can get him on Instagram and Facebook. He's Culturalation CIC. I'll spell that for you because I can barely say it. CULTURALUTIONCIC. He also has a show on Big Condor Online, which is YouTube. Just search Discovery with James Diboe, and he's also had a few chat with Chase Johnson, who was our